Hello everyone and welcome. This is the call to order to the Amherst County Board of Supervisors meeting. Let the record reflect it is April 19th, 2022 and it is 7 p.m. Our first order of business is the approval of the agenda. I do think we have a few changes that will need to be made. We're going to remove section 5 items B and C. We need to remove those two. They need a little bit more work. So I'll go ahead and make the motion that we remove item B and C. There's a motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, are there any more changes? If not, I will go ahead and make a motion. We approve the agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask Mr. Jimmy Ayers to lead us.
Let us pray. Heavenly, most gracious Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blooms we see, notifying us that spring is really near. Father, we pray for our men and women of the military as they stand in harm's way each day on foreign lands as well as here at home to protect our liberties that we so enjoy each and every day. We pray a special blessing on the folks in Ukraine and all the tragedies that we're seeing take place there. We pray that your hand of peace can be used in that area as well as in the area of Russia. Father, be with our men and women of police, fire, and EMS as they protect our communities and provide a vital service so that we can have a peaceful way of life. Be with us as we move forward with the business of the county. Guide us and direct us. Gives us the strength, courage, and the wisdom to make decisions that are pleasing to you and beneficial to our community. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Well spoken. Next, we have citizen comments. We have 5 people signed up, and first would be Mr. John Furry. Could you please come forward and state your district for the record, please?
Again, my name is John Furry. I'm with District 5. I'm here again to address the proposed River Edge Park Vista project at Lane Street in Madison Heights. Twice before I've stood here before this board and asked them to provide the taxpayers, the voters, and the public of Amherst County with a concise purpose and needs statement for a project that was not mentioned in the latest comprehensive documents. The economic, engineering, environmental, and social impact studies, and whatever preliminary status they happen to be at this time. These reports were supposedly necessary or should be necessary to make any kind of a decision regarding this project, and that the board would actually inform and engage the public in an interactive forum regarding this project. So far, the board has provided none of this. The only information about the plan is a very preliminary drawing that somehow has escaped or leaked into the public's hands. It's a fuzzy drawing, but you can make out a little bit of what's going on, especially where it's discussing the taking of private land, if necessary, by eminent domain. This lack of openness leads me and others in the community to think someone's pockets are possibly being lined by the board's negligence or worse, abuse of authority. The excuse of the lack of public involvement provided by the county administrator in this room in February was the plan is too new to get it out and to discuss it openly. This is a bit of a whitewash of the truth. The essence of this plan has been bouncing around this board for years. Did the board, in fact, pass a condemnation resolution without some meaningful data in front of it? Open public engagement should begin before any prejudicial decisions are made, not after a predetermined plan has been selected. There are 4 distinct standalone elements represented in the preliminary plan. A zip line, which is a tourist attraction, the ridge walkways and some tot lots, and the connector elevators and hiking trails leading down to the lower level of the park, but there's no indication of who wants them, how badly they want them. What is the demand that warrants the taking of forced property, private property, to put this in? And a restaurant that could be a standalone feature. But operating a restaurant is not a function of county government. It's a private sector function and should remain such. The government should not be using its authority to provide an unfair advantage to any restaurant developer, and restaurants should remain a private enterprise. The walkways, tot lots, elevators, hiking trails that were represented on that drawing are recreation. But are they a smokescreen to acquire land for an added, questionable, less appropriate restaurant? This may be legal, but it certainly skirts the intent of the relevant statutes. If a developer is needed to finance this project, they will want a huge cut of any funds generated, as will any contracted operators of the zip line and restaurant. Lynchburg's also going to want a cut of the proceeds. What will be left for Amherst County? Again, why is Amherst County government so intent on condemning private property and damaging the value of adjacent taxpayer property? I ask again, can each of these separable features of this project be economically justified? At least two of the elements appear to be for the gain of at least one private developer under the unstated guise of increasing tax revenues through economic development. Taking the private property for the walkways and the playground as recreation is a valid basis for eminent domain, but not where the actual and clear dominant intent is for a tourist attraction or a restaurant to boost the county's economy. Next question is, why is so much of this so far being discussed in closed-door sessions? People whose livelihoods, people whose way of life, people who have lived in this community for decades are standing by wondering what's going on. You think that it hasn't had an impact already? The day eminent domain, the day that condemnation of property is mentioned, it starts affecting property values, and not typically for the good. The more information you folks get from different independent sources should help you to make better decisions. It seems that you are acting on information from a source or sources that there appears to be some potential for a monetary conflict of interest. Input from every resident of the community is going to be somewhat biased, but they're going to be driven to protect their homes and their community, not by the dollar sign. Again, twice before I've stood before this board, asked for information that should be reasonably available to the public. Again, public involvement should be encouraged, not being avoided at this point. The more input you can get up front, the better your decision's going to be. I have asked the chairman and I have asked my supervisor by email dated March the 10th for this information. And I again implore this board to openly engage the community in a meaningful, active way as is stated in the board's published mission, the board's stated values, and the board's goal statements. If we don't get on with getting the public involved, this is going to look like you folks have something to hide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry. Next, we have Sterling Ewers.
Hi, I'm Sterling Ewers. I used to be known as Ed Ewers when I was working for James C. May and Associates. So I've been involved in projects like this for 20, 25 years now. And I'm retired now. And but anyhow, so I know there's different steps that are taken in a project, whereas number one up there on the hill, that's all residential, as everybody knows. And it'll have to be rezoned to put a restaurant up there. That is something that you're going to have to get input from a lot of people that are not going to like that. But the number one on the study would be coming from 210, the connector, to get to this site. You have to travel down Main Street and then up Stumps Hill. Down Main Street's going to require traffic impact study because it will impact all of the people on that road down through there. Coming up Stumps Hill, I know if y'all have driven up that hill right there, you know that it's more than a 10% grade. It's probably 20% grade going up that hill right there. So I know if you had a development that was going in and from raw land, and the developer came in and said, I want to build this up here, I'm going to put a 20% grade going up to it, y'all would deny it. That's an existing grade. It would have to, something would have to be done with it for traffic safety. I mean, you know, if they put a restaurant on a hill, somebody coming down that hill, a little bit of rain, a little bit of ice, a little bit of snow, whatever, it's going to end up with a pile of cars at the bottom of Stumps Hill up there. That's just a situation that, it's a traffic safety hazard. And the increase in traffic that's going up, and those kids that play out in the street in any residential neighborhood, and they're still doing it. But you get traffic, they're going to increase the traffic with a restaurant up there, 50 to 100 cars a day, maybe more. And that's going to put an impact on the citizens that are living there. And then there's the matter of the noise that's going to be taken up there. I live right at 127 Lane Street, right at the end of Lane Street right there, and would be impacted by this. Right now, we enjoy the peace that's up there. There's deer, bear, turkey, all kinds of, you know, wildlife to run around up there, and it's wonderful, it really is. But to put a restaurant in a residential, residential zoning, it's not some place to do. There are plenty of other places to build restaurants in this town. I know there's a nice view there. I enjoy it every day, but that's no reason to take people's land with eminent domain and then give it to a private developer. Give it to them, sell it to them, however you want to say. I don't think a private developer should benefit from eminent domain where they would have to take the land and give it to him. That's about all I have to say. I hope that y'all the zip line, fine. I enjoy going out to restaurants, but up there, that's not the place for it. You would impact a lot of people, especially, like I say, coming down Main Street down through there. You're going to have to do some road widening all down through. I don't know, who would pay for the road widening? Is the county going to take care of all of that for the developer? I mean, that doesn't sound, I know when I worked and there was developers, if a developer was putting in the cost would be to the developer, but not the county. The people of Amherst County want to pay for development that a private individual is going to benefit from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ewers. Next, we have Kelly Whitmore.
Hi, I'm Kelly Whitmore. I'm District 5, 117 Lane Street, directly across from the proposed development for the park expansion. In the March 1st of 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting, after the community comments, County Administrator Dean Rogers made two statements regarding the River's Edge Park expansion that I would like to specifically address. He said that the condemnation process, also known as eminent domain, or as the government taking private citizens' property, for the expansion of the park had not been started. However, more than 2 months prior, on December 22nd of 2021, a letter, which I have copies of to provide to you if you'd like to have one, a letter was sent to me from the Amherst County Attorney, on which Dean was CC'd, stating that on behalf of the Amherst County Board of Supervisors, please allow this correspondence to serve as Amherst County's formal notice of its intent to acquire my property pursuant to the condemnation procedures of the Commonwealth of Virginia. The RE line, the letter states, notice of intent to acquire property by eminent domain and bona fide offer to purchase. Also, a title search was done and an appraisal was done months prior to that. So I'm not sure how, maybe on a technicality, they could state that the process of condemnation hadn't started, but at least one formal legal letter of intent had gone out months prior to a statement that the condemnation process had not started. Also, on the same date of the meeting, Dean had said that the Board of Supervisors had been presented with an idea to expand the park, and that they attempted to share the information with the public immediately, as soon as they thought of the idea. However, Dean Rogers has not only been discussing the development of the Clifftop parcel since at least 2018, 4 years ago, he has personally been up to my property both in 2018 and 2019, and in a phone conversation with me on March of 2019, he said that the county is trying to collect property up there, ostensibly at this point, to create a park, and asked if I would sell my land and my home. When I declined, he asked if I would grant an easement. He said that he has a developer who would want to buy the land, and if there's a number that I would like to sell for, he'd be happy to pass that information along to the developer. The developer, I have to assume, is likely Dave McCormick, as he also came up to my property in 2018 and stated that he purchased the parcel adjacent to mine and was working with the county to develop land up there. Even though the county has acknowledged my ownership of the parcel, they sent a surveyor to survey my property just a few weeks ago on March 31st of 2022 without my knowledge or permission. They gave the surveyor a document listing my parcel as unknown owner and did not inform them of my involvement in the property. While the press release that was released back in February shows a drawing of a restaurant and a zip line on my land, the county administrators also stated that they don't know what the land will be used for. Are you telling me that you're taking my property for purposes that you don't know and have done no research on to see if they would be physically or fiscally feasible for the ideas that you've put in the press release? Or are you telling me that you're taking the property that I would not sell to you for a restaurant and a private developer? In closing, this is not the first time that Amherst County has threatened eminent domain for my property. However, in January of 2019, the county attorney, Mike Lockaby, wrote an email to my lawyer stating the following: "The Board of Supervisors has decided that private industry should have the opportunity either to preserve or use the Clifftop parcels in an appropriate manner and will not be moving forward with any proceedings in the nature of eminent domain or to acquire it." So I'm not sure how we ended back up here, because I can tell you I cried lots of tears of joy when I read that, because I was very scared that this was going to happen. And I was then informed that the Board of Supervisors had no intent to take my property, and yet my property is where this restaurant is drawn, it's where the zip line is drawn, it's where the elevators, the stairs, all of it. I'm just not sure how we ended up here, and I'd really like for you guys to not do it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, would anyone like a copy of the letter? I have copies. Yep. You can just pass them down for anyone else who'd like them.
All right, next we have Florence Laundrie. If I said that wrong, please excuse me. And just state your district for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Florence Laundrie. I'm District 5. I live one block over from the Lane Street project that has been projected. My family grew up there. I've grown up there. I've lived there. I've owned my property for almost 30 years. Again, I'm speaking to the transparency or lack of from this project being given to the public, because again, at the meeting that I attended at March 1st, it was stated that this was presented about 2 weeks before. I have spoken to at least 2 different people in 2018, unbeknownst to Kelly's involvement, with people walking around property that was private. So we asked what they were doing, and they said, "We're going to buy it. We're going to put a restaurant." And we said, "You're never going to be able to do that up here. We already have permission." This has been in plan for years. I don't appreciate it being stated that this is something new. What is new is that we weren't told by the people who work for us. The county government is for us. It is not for private development. To take a land that has been in a family for years, that we all know has been in their family for years, for a private restaurant. The county's not going to run it. I don't think the county can run it. So how can you take someone's land to give it to a developer? That is against what the Constitution of eminent domain stands for. And if you put a park bench in the corner of it and say it's a park, and then we can't do anything with the rest, that is not what this county should stand for. And on top of that, you do that, what happens to the rest of us? We're not going to be able to stay there. It's going to be eminent domain, block by block, until you get to the bottom of Stumps Hill. We have people who live on that hill who have been there their entire lives. They're in their 80s. This is not something they should have to be worrying about at the end of their retirement. They should be able to enjoy what they've worked for. I should be able to enjoy what my parents and I worked for. Now I'm scared you're going to take it. And I'm not going to be able to start over. For a restaurant and a zip line that more than likely is not even physically feasible, it's definitely not going to be a moneymaker 4 months out of the year. And for a restaurant that in this area, we can't get people to work in the restaurants we have. How are you going to staff it? Who's going to want to drive up there in the snow? We can't get off the hill now when it snows. We don't exist when it snows, when there's power outages. Why do we exist now? Because you want the property. And it's not a destination, it is a neighborhood. It is a home for lots of people. It should not be considered for this. It is, I don't even understand how we got on somebody's radar, but we have been on their radar since 2018. We were not just put on the radar 2 weeks before that press release was given. That is very upsetting to hear. When it said, this is new, we haven't started anything. Now, none of us even knew that Kelly had gotten a condemnation letter. We did not know that until after the meeting. But I know that I've talked to 2 separate people for the property straight across from my house and the property on the corner that stated they were going to purchase it for a restaurant. When my family sold the property straight across the street from me, after they sold it, they asked, are you going to build a house? And they said, no, we're going to build a restaurant. That was when they sold the property in 2018, 2019. That's when the special exceptions rule was passed by the board to allow an appeal for a restaurant in a neighborhood. I spoke against that through email because I could not attend. Because I knew the writing on the wall. Because they had already told my family they were going to do that. Then the special exceptions came up not even a month before after that. This is not new. We are not being transparent with the county. I want the board to do what it's supposed to do, what our mission statement says, how I grew up. This county should be for the citizens who live there, not for private developers, not for money that we're never going to see. I hope that you make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Ms. Gloria Witt. Could you please state your
Yes.
district for the record, please?
Thank you. District 3. And I am presenting a proposal from the NAACP. One of our board members was watching, not a member, was watching the March meeting. And in that meeting, the Board of Supervisors stated they were contemplating purchasing real estate near Rivers Edge Park. It's been a live conversation. The NAACP interpreted that to be a willingness to enhance recreational opportunities. And after discussion, an element of the mission of NAACP includes a focus on social development in communities, and research suggests that positive results in social development is influenced with recreational experiences as children. So with the budget process approaching, this property being discussed, the NAACP is recommending that the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, and/or the Recreation Department consider installing a cooling station for young children like the one at Riverside Park in Lynchburg, Virginia. If not near the Rivers Edge Park area, somewhere on the southern end of Amherst County. It is understood that the population density is greatest in this area of the county, coupled with the concern that air conditioning is limited within many homes. The NAACP believes creating this space will positively improve the lives and quality of life for children across the county. So that is what I would like to share in terms of planting seeds for future investments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak under citizen comments? Please come forward. Please state your name and your district, please.
Hi, my name is Sid Starozum. I live in District 2. I just wanted to comment very briefly about the proposed budget. I have concerns about the school board budget, which was approved very rapidly. Is that germane to comment here? Can I talk about the school board budget?
Well, there will be a public hearing about the budget, if you would want to bring it up.
Oh, okay, I just saw it on the budget hearing. I'm happy to talk about
That's
it.
for a public hearing for the budget, so if you'd like to wait till then, you can.
Oh, I see, okay. I
You
thought
can
it's,
speak
Yeah,
twice.
I thought it
you're up
said,
here now, you might as well speak.
says here, April 19th, okay. Well, just very briefly, I would like the Board of Supervisors to take a very close look at the school board's proposed budget. I think it's excessive and not particularly well spent. I would love to see the school board send it back and ask, the Board of Supervisors rather, to send it back and ask the school board to provide some zero-based budgeting. This is basically, the process has been pretty much just adding on to the budget every year. There are a lot of things that are currently being paid for and things that are being proposed that I don't really feel good about. One of them is the fact that the size of the administration has grown considerably in the last decade. Many administrative employees are involved in data collection processes. Many of these data collection processes are parts of programs, federal and state programs, that are essentially part of equity initiatives designed to what they call disaggregate data, basically separate various characteristics of children based upon racial and sexual categories that really are nobody's business. And they don't tell us who this data is going to be made available to. The parents certainly haven't been consulted or informed as to why all this data is being collected. And some of it's funded by us, some of it's funded through grants. They're always applying for grants, every dollar they can get their hands on, to create these positions that really aren't needed. I believe it's time that we got back to just basically educating kids. I think they need to hire as many good teachers as they can, need a basic core administrative staff, and I'd like to see the rest of this stuff go by the wayside. We're also paying for membership in organizations that we don't need to belong to, and certain private vendor programs that we don't need. The Virginia School Boards Association, which you probably are somewhat familiar with, which was, is part of the National School Boards Association, is a political organization that does provide some de minimis services to our local school boards. Taxpayers pay for every bit of it, but they are a political organization. They have close ties. Well, they are a member currently of the National School Boards Association. They are going to be creating a new group because they were disgraced by their involvement in the effort by the National School Boards Association to collude with the Biden Justice Department to try to get parent involvement eliminated at school board meetings. If you may recall from the news, they were, the administration was proposed to have parents who speak out at school board meetings in opposition to their policies be labeled as domestic terrorists. And it goes on and on. But there are other programs. They have one called the VTSS. A lot of these programs have equity initiatives embedded within them. Even though our school administration continues to deny that they participate in critical race theory initiatives, they do all the time. A lot of these programs that are going on right now, some will be ending by mandate from the new administration in Richmond, but there's been cultural competency testing. They have the social emotional learning programs, which are still going on. And our school administration currently is very eager to purchase these canned programs, which are full of critical race theory. And It's, there certainly are aspects of these programs that have value. That's how they get them in. Everything has a little agenda, a little hidden agenda beneath it. And it's just time to get politics out of our school system. I don't particularly think any political persuasion has a place in school. This should be a place where kids learn how to learn, not be taught how to learn. And you all heard, that terminology that we're indoctrinating children, we're preparing them for a life as subjects of a centralized state government. Some people call it conspiracy theory. I do believe that children are being pushed in a particular direction by various organizations that our school board and school administration do affiliate with. I'm also concerned about a recent request to add $50,000 to the budget so that an attorney can sit beside our superintendent, our school superintendent, during school board meetings. I have no idea why they would want to do that. The school board and the school administration has access to legal services when they need it. I don't think our superintendent needs to have an attorney hold his hand during school board meetings. There's very little controversial stuff that goes on. There's very little debate at school board meetings, and there's absolutely no debate with the public when the public people make comment at school board meetings. And I think this amount of money should just be refused. It's just money down the toilet, if you will. So anyway, those are just a few items. To just recap, I just want to suggest that the Board of Supervisors, you all have plenty of work on your plate, take a real close look at the necessity for a lot of these expenses, and really do insist that our schools disassociate from these politically driven organizations like the Virginia School Board Association. There's no reason for taxpayers to be paying for political activism. And these people have lobby in Washington. They associate with all the lobbyists in Washington that are, like the NEA, various other school advocacy groups. They're all leftists, and I think they're all working to the detriment of Amherst County schools. Thank you. Sorry to be so long-winded.
Oh, not a problem. Appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments, and we're going to move on to public hearing ordinance 2022-0003. Mr. Popovich, could you bring us up to date regarding changing our county code regarding dangerous dogs and so forth?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The proposed revisions to the county's code regarding dangerous dogs is, quite frankly, a technical amendment. The General Assembly made certain technical amendments to the state code, and I'm simply trying to bring the county code into compliance with those revisions.
All right, Board, do you have any questions? If not, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for ordinance 2022-0003. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Is there anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll turn it over to the board. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt.
I got one question for
Yes.
Dean. That one misspell, was that corrected? I can't get it on my computer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt ordinance 2022-0003 as presented.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next we'll move on to, give me one second here, the deed of dedication regarding, let's see here, one second, please. Regarding the dedication of a right-of-way to the town of Amherst.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. This property is there in front of the train depot. As you can see, the parking lot at the train depot has one end open, and that was left open so that one day it might connect to Lynchburg Road. The county's cleared the trees between there and Lynchburg Road, and we have been working with the town because VDOT has the funding to pave that, to complete that road this year through a program that's available to towns. So in order for this transfer to occur, because it's in the town and the funding is for towns, not for counties, we are proposing that we give this 50-foot wide swath that connects from the existing Lynchburg Road all the way up to 60 East to the town, so that the town can grant a right-of-way to VDOT. VDOT won't take ownership, they only want a right-of-way. So the town has to own it so that they can use their funding to pave it. So that's what we're doing and why we're doing it. We're trying to put that area to use. And that will give us a connection down to Depot Street. And there's business down there that we don't want people driving through the neighborhoods. They'll be able to skirt those neighborhoods and come up in front of the train depot. And that's our purpose there.
All right, board, do you have any questions for Mr. Rogers? All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for the deed of dedication. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Seeing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Board, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the deed of dedication.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Mrs. Tucker, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. All right, next we have Mr. Brown. We have a special exception, 2022-086. Miss Julie and Brian Poirot.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is a request by Brian and Julie Perro for a special exception request in the A1 Agricultural Residential District. The purpose of this special exception is to allow for a pastor's retreat, a church, and a wedding venue. This property is located at 1770 Early Farm Road, tax map number 141A6. This property has had a number of unique uses associated with it. It was built in the 90s as a hunting lodge. It's also been a bed and breakfast. It was a long-term care facility / retirement home at one point. And it was also run by Central Health as a substance abuse treatment facility. So the Perros are intending to repurpose this building for those uses that I listed. There are 7 conditions that the Planning Commission recommended as part of this request and are common to other conditions that are applied to those types of uses. The recommended motion is that the board approve the special exception with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission.
All right, board, do you have any questions for Mr. Bryant? I think we're all familiar with the property. It seems like a legitimate use. So with that being said, if there's no questions for Mr. Bryant, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward.
Good evening, I'm Julie Perro. My husband Brian, we're the owners of the property, and we just wanted to thank you for your consideration and ask you if you had any questions that weren't answered by the paperwork.
Board, are there any questions? I think we're all familiar with the property. It seems to be a perfect use for this parcel. I know that it's a large piece of property and a nice place for something like this. So I have no questions, if you all do not. So.
Well, we do live on the property and will when it's a business, so we will keep it in good standing with the neighbors, and just hope to bring attention to the beauty that is Amherst County. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Pugh.
Can you state your...
District 3, Mr. Harris. And I'm also on the Planning Commission. Just wanted to pass along my sentiments, not on behalf of the Planning Commission, but on my part of the Planning Commission. I think we were all, like you maybe already, I don't want to presume what you think, but we were all in a very unanimous accord of what we thought of this coming into our county for this use at this time. So we're appreciative of what the Paras are trying to do with this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. All right, is anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I asked...
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Supervisors approve special exception 2022-086 with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission.
All right, are there any further discussion?
I just have one comment. Make sure you keep the mulch away from the building.
Don't ask me how I know, but probably won't.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Hope it works well for you all. All right, Mr. Rogers, we're off to the budget presentation. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has been a long 6 months or so as we have developed the budget. We've gone through the process of working out the O&M portion. We have, the board has considered the capital improvements, any supplemental projects, has prioritized all those, and we have worked them all into this budget that I'll present tonight, and we'll be prepared to answer any questions that anybody may have. And if I can't, then Stacy's here because she can, our finance director. So we're looking at a $52 million budget. At least that's all of our revenues anyway. So our operating budget is $49 million. 1.7 million of those are for our capital improvement plan, and 170,000 is for the supplemental projects, which are listed in the budget document itself. That leaves us with 1.3 additional dollars of revenue that we have not apportioned to anything in particular. For the most part, that's additional revenue from the spike in used vehicle values. And so we don't think that's going to continue, so we don't want to commit ourselves to spending money that we don't think is going to be coming in again in the future. So we're just sort of dropping that into savings for the board to use, which for the most part will be used on other capital projects in the future as we move forward. This is where the money is coming in from and how it is going out. So for the most part, the biggest source of revenue for the county slightly still remains real estate taxes. Okay? And for the entire time I've been here, it has been the board's objective to not increase real estate taxes, but to encourage the growth of this section, which is commercial taxes, sales taxes, economic development. And we are starting to make some headway in that regard. This personal property tax, that includes vehicles. And that's why that's such a big chunk this year. And as I said, we expect that to be smaller again. Once the supply chain issue with regard to computer chips, which has slowed down the sale of new vehicles and was why all new vehicle lots are empty, once that clears up, the market for used cars will go back to normal, and that should provide less revenue. And hopefully we can continue to generate more economic development. Over on the right side is how we are spending the money. A little bit over a quarter of our budget goes toward education, and about a fifth of our budget goes toward public safety, and almost the same amount is what operates the county budget. Okay, our debt service is only about 7%. That's quite healthy. That's quite healthy and quite reasonable. Our capital improvements are here down at 4%. And over here, this purple section is what we spend on personnel, which is in most businesses, in most enterprises, the personnel costs are the highest costs, and ours are still quite reasonable. So here's some of the highlights of the budget. There is no tax increase proposed to the board. And in fact, there is a reduction by 20% of the value of used vehicles, the personal property tax. So before we tax them, we will reduce the value by 20%, then impose the tax. So that's to try to compensate for that increased value. You probably read in the news that the cost of living is probably pushing up around 8% now, but we've been able to work in a 6.5% COLA, a cost of living allowance for county staff. The reality is, COLA, the cost of living doesn't ever back down, and if we can't keep up with it, we end up falling further and further behind, and as you know from recent years, we start to lose personnel when we don't compete in the marketplace for their labor, and so this was, this is a wise amount for the COLA. It's not the full amount, but it keeps us close to what the actual cost of living is. Now, we have not added anything to the school's budget. The school is receiving what they requested, but what they requested, we have not increased for the last 5 years. And so that's remained even. However, because they need the renovation of the high school and the auditorium, we are taking on that debt for the schools, and that will increase our debt service by about $94,000. Not immediately, it'll start in about 2 years that debt service will begin. So we are taking that debt service on for the schools. The cost of VRS has gone up slightly. The cost of our health insurance goes up. That seems to go up a little bit every year. That's been rolled into this budget. And as you recall, that $1.3 million is simply set aside for savings. That's a huge chunk. And that's sort of unique in my time here. We haven't been able to do that so far, and it's nice that we can refill our coffers. So the rest of my discussion is really going to address how the budget works and how our activities work to achieve the goals that the board has set. There's 8 goals that you've set. They're on the Board of Supervisors webpage. You agreed to those in your annual retreat last August, and so we have worked to try to address the things you wanted us to address in that budget. Your number 1 item was broadband expansion, but there's nothing in the budget for that because much of that was taken care of in this past year through grants, through our partnership with Firefly Broadband. 75% of the county's residents already have access to broadband. And so our partnership with Firefly will reach the remaining 75%, or at least close to 75%. We still need to work with Comcast to reach some of their dead ends, and we are doing that. Firefly plans to have all of their fiber laid within the next 3 years. Their plan actually makes it look like they'll get it done in 2 years, so they've given themselves a buffer. And then the schools, of course, bought 10 mobile trailers to put up broadcasting sites as needed, and they bought mobile hotspots for children to take home. So broadband expansion is moving forward, and there was no need to add additional funding for that in this budget. The board wants to see residential growth in our designated areas. We all understand that economic development is based upon rooftops. The businesses that we want to see come here need a certain head count in the community. They need homes, we call them rooftops, and the county in its comprehensive plan has designated that our growth area is really that area south of 130. And north of 130 is, for the most part, will remain rural in our county. So the CVTC redevelopment plan was completed, and we funded that in past years. We don't have any funding set aside for anything further at this point. I think it'll be tied up for the next year or two as it moves through Commonwealth disposal processes. But that gives us a breather, time to market it and try to find interested parties, gather local developers to see what they want to do, and so forth. Also, in the last year's budget, or the current year's budget, but you approved last year, is the Madison Heights Master Plan. Now, that master plan will roll into one, the CVTC plan, the VDOT planning on Business 29, the Park Service planning along the river, and the developers that are already making plans in the empty growth area of Madison Heights. So our master planners have already developed a website. We are developing the press releases to put that out to the public. So there will be places on there for the public to make comment about the plan, the things they want to see. The plan goes all the way down to the river. So even the things on Stumps Hill, there'll be places for people to make comments, ask questions, make proposals. And there's two parts. There's a questionnaire part, and there is a map part. So you can actually put a pinpoint on a map and say what you think about that exact place. So that is going forward this year. It'll take a year to do that. So whatever comes out of that, the current developer in the planning area of what we're calling Newtown Madison Heights we've had some preliminary meetings with them, and they're looking at donating to the county about 13 acres. Jeremy's not here. I think it's a large swath for public parks, libraries, band shell, water park, and to keep the big trees that are there on the property. So it's looking like a great plan, and our master planners have indicated they like it too. So that's going underway, and we'll use this year of development to figure out what money we need to set aside for the future if we're going to build anything in there. The third element of your goals is to promote business growth. So we maintain funding for the EDA, including the EDA's tax penny that they use specifically for economic development. The Route 29 Beautification Committee continues to receive funding that they use for little mini grants for businesses up and down 29 to beautify their storefronts and their lots. The partnership with broadband, every business needs internet, and every home can become a business once they've all got their wireless. The Business Friendliness Initiative continues in, a lot of our tax structure has been changed to eliminate the merchant's capital tax and revise the business license tax, so it's the same for all businesses across the county. So we've equalized that. But, we're also working hand in hand with a lot of developers and a lot of businesses that are trying to come with the county. We have pressed on VDOT to be more business friendly, and that is showing fruit. And so, the Business Friendliness Initiative that you all have been so supportive of is really beginning to pay off. So, and of course, we're continuing funding for the county fair, although this year it was cut in half from what you've given to the fair in past years because they made money last year and they were able to set some of that aside for this year. And if they continue to make money, each year we'll give them less and less until they are standing on their own feet. You've asked us to promote tourism, and so that is in the budget. Our Parks and Recreation Director has been renamed our Recreation and Tourism Director, and he is in the process of coordinating with the Library Board, with the Historic Society, with the Chamber of Commerce to develop a parks plan and a tourism plan. So everyone will see in the CIP listing, you have set aside a lot of money for parks improvements and trails and so forth. So that is built into this budget. We continue our public information officer to promote the county's resources, to promote the county's assets and all the good news across the county. Some counties don't share their publicity resources because they don't want to be caught in a situation where they're favoring some and not favoring others. My policy is we promote everybody and everything, and so that's how we make sure everybody gets included. So we don't say no to anybody, and we try to promote their activities so that it's all seen as one community. Our public safety assets continue to grow. You've built a fourth ambulance crew, and that is funded in this budget to continue. And the constitutionals are being taken care of. The county records are deteriorating and needed dehumidifiers. And the courthouse, the sheriff asked for security at the courthouse with cameras and locks and so forth, and that is being implemented in this budget also. When it comes to education, the schools received what they asked. but they wisely did not ask for anything more than they've gotten last year and the year before and the year before that. As I said, we are assuming the debt for the high school improvement project, and we continue to study the possibility of doing career and technical education in a partnership agricultural facility with Nelson County. We're awaiting the results of that feasibility study, whether we should buy the land with Nelson County. There are two other counties, I don't want to name them, but there are two other counties that are also interested. If this gets off the ground, they may end up joining us in this, because agricultural CTE and heavy equipment CTE is not common in our region, and this could be quite an aid to regional CTE. So this is how we're supporting education. To retain our staff, you asked that training budgets be increased. They were maintained. They were increased in those offices and departments where they did not previously exist. I mentioned the COLA. The board has approved a grants administrator. The general feeling is that a grants administrator pays for themselves over time, but the reality is we are swimming in grants. We are swamped with grants. And while it's fun to receive a big flush of cash with the grant, they come with a very long administrative tail. And every grant has a different set of auditors, a different computer program to enter the data and keep track of it, and it's very time-consuming, and we don't have anyone to do that. Our finance officer has to do that on her own in addition to her other duties. And of course, we've got a new employee benefits provider for the county, and at no additional cost, but we're keeping that going forward. Hopefully that will improve. We try to maintain citizen engagement. The EDA is going to renew its Amherst Leadership Program, which they have funding for that from us. The Beautification Committee I already mentioned. The county has 16 boards, committees, commissions, and councils that are staffed by citizens. And so we work hard to keep those fully staffed and to recruit volunteers to do that. And in addition to that, in this past year, we've started up the Coalition for a Cleaner County, which is to take care of litter. And in that regard, in negotiations with the sheriff, we were able to rewrite the position description of their code enforcement officer, which we fund for them, to include within that position description a great deal more public outreach, to get more of the citizens of the county involved. For Earth Day coming up in the coming month, the schools will be participating, as well as county staff and as many other organizations as we can get engaged. Our future funding challenges are not news to anybody. Our public safety vehicles get run hard, and therefore they wear out right on schedule, and we have to continue to turn them over and replace them on a regular basis, so that's not going to go away. And if the county does grow, and as the county does acquire more rooftops, we can count on needing more crews. And that will be a challenge into the future, because the revenue tends to lag a little bit behind the development, but the crews need to be there right away. Maintaining our staff is a challenge. We have a really high-performing staff here, and it is frequently robbed by other localities, so we tend to be a training ground for other localities, and they see us as a target to reach, and they are beginning to raise their salaries, and they will press up against us. Supporting increasing economic development. As these developers come in, yes, they'll make proffers on the things they'll do for us, but they'll also expect us to do things for them. And the EDA is always engaged in, there's tax incentives that we offer, and there's construction that they'll ask from us, and that will be a challenge. So yes, we need to grow so that we can take that burden off of real estate taxes, but there's a cost that comes to that if we're going to limit the tax burden for citizens. And then, of course, if we do get more rooftops, that could be a challenge for our schools. So that exists in all communities. It's nothing new. Every community has to deal with that. But we are making progress in all the areas that you've asked us to. So with that, I conclude my budget presentation and invite questions.
Any questions from the board? See none. All right, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing, Mr. Rogers. All right. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Board, are there any more discussions or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I did have a couple of things that I wanted to mention. And I mentioned these at the request of a great number of citizens that have called me, which also included teachers and business owners. As a nation, and specifically in the Commonwealth of Virginia over the last year, we have seen a growing interest from parents about what's being taught in our schools. I have talked to the chairwoman of the school board recently and to a couple of other school board members. And I feel very positive in their reactions and their investigation into this and the progress that they're making. I understand that they have had some good interviews for a new school superintendent, and I feel very confident that the person that they choose will be a person that reflects this community's beliefs and value systems. I feel that very strongly. Having said that, I've been on this board for 12 years. I have seen an increase in the number of people in administration. That has concerned me for a long time. It continues to concern me, and I've been told that it's because of so many mandates from both federal and state level of data that has to be collected and certain spots that we have to fill. But that still does concern me. The $16 million that this board contributes to the school board budget is a drop in a bucket. You're right, they get a lot of money from the feds, they get a lot of money from the state, so our $16 million really is a drop in their bucket. But it is our $16 million. It's $16 million that comes from the backs of Amherst County residents. And we need to be respectful of that, and we need to make sure that it is being spent in a manner that reflects the fabric of this community. And so I ask the school board, as we move forward, these grants that you're getting, please examine them closely. Know what you're getting into. Know what requirements that you have to teach in order to take this money. And remember those taxpayers, and remember the people that elected you all and put you in office. Lastly, I want to thank the school board for their commitment, the work that they've done. And Mr. Chairman, that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Mr. Martin?
Sure. So, starting to hear rumblings again about our deputies and public safety people being robbed by other communities. I think you alluded to it. We looked at it early on in the budget process. I believe we had a presentation on it in February. I would ask this board that we keep an eye on that, okay? And if it comes to a point where we have real data showing that they are in fact leaving for higher salaries, I would hope that we would be able to come back together and do something about that. Because we need to keep our well-trained individuals here in the county. The other thing I will say is, Ms. McBride, this is my third budget. We had a lot of back and forth over the years. I know you do a lot of heavy lifting on this budget, and I appreciate your work on it, so thank you for that. And if there's nothing else, I would move that we, if I can find it, the board convene at least 7 days from today to consider approval of the FY23 O&M budget and capital improvement plan as presented.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin, unless there's any more discussion. All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So, Mr. Rogers, regarding the next, will that be at our next meeting, or when will you schedule the actual vote?
In the past, when the timeline has been tight, we've scheduled a meeting 7 days from tonight, but we're not in a rush, we're ahead of schedule. So we'll just do this at your next regular meeting.
All right, and I'd like to echo what Mr. Martin said. I know the county staff, this is probably one of the toughest things they do each and every year is putting together this budget. So you earn your money when you do that, and we appreciate what you do, and thank you for what you do. So all kudos goes to you all, and hopefully next year it's even better. So we appreciate what you do, and thank you for what you do.
I guess Mr.
I have
Rogers
one
has
question
something to do
from,
with it.
Ms. Tucker?
for our finance director. Will the software that we have funded, and I think you all have selected, will that play a large part in the next year's budget, or will it be too soon?
It may. We're hoping, it depends on the timeline, we're hoping to have the finance piece up and running by the end of this fiscal year, and yes, it could, but the budget module would be after that. So I'm hoping, because that gives me a lot of freedom for people to input stuff and give it to me.
Thanks again.
All right, did you have something, Mr. Martin?
No, I was just going to say, I guess Mr. Rogers had a little to do with the budget, but
Not much.
yeah, not much.
That was Stacy's doing.
Well, anyway, thank you too, Mr. Rogers, appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I know that if you have any questions, I know there's a couple of items under A regarding the workshops. I know that I need to abstain from the March 15th budget workshop and the March 15th meeting. I think Ms. Tucker does as well.
Yeah, I need to abstain from everything on March 15th.
And I need to abstain from 322, so could we just take each of those minutes individually?
Yes, certainly. All right, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes from March 15th, 2022, the 5 p.m. budget workshop, as well as the 7 p.m. meeting. I will abstain, as well as Ms. Tucker, from that. All in favor for the minutes being approved, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that motion carries. The next, we'll go to the March 22nd budget workshop. I know Mr. Martin will abstain from that. So we'll go ahead and ask for a, all in favor of approving the March 22nd meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
All right, I think that clears it up, correct?
Yes, sir. Thank
All right. And next, we'll go ahead and, do you have any other questions, or we can approve B and C together? Do you have any questions? All right, I'll make a motion, we approve items B and C. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, under new business, we have youth sports success and funding request. Mr. Nally, if you could come up for us.
Sorry about that. Hello and good evening. I have good news and a little bit of bad news. Good news are our numbers were up very, very well over the past year, and it was a little bit unexpected. For example, and I'm taking out the COVID year when everything was really low, winter basketball went from 223 to 278 participants, spring soccer 275 to 335, and fall soccer was 225 to 218, so about the same, but that was coming out of that COVID year. And so when the budget was put together, we obviously had no clue what we were expecting this year. So the bad news from the growth in numbers is, for example, our uniforms. In the fall season of just this last year, they were $14.69 a piece. Same vendor this year was $23.20 in a 6-month span. Field paint, we bought $49.75 a case, is now $69.60 a case. So we've had huge increase in numbers, and just something that wasn't anticipated on the previous budget. The good news is we have that revenue. It's just when somebody signs up for soccer, say it's $40, that all goes into one bucket, and then my expenditures come from a different bucket. So what we're requesting is just some of that revenue bucket to be brought back over to cover expenses for this year, and then added revenue for next year, because again, wasn't planned, and knowing the increase in prices, just not knowing what we're going to get into. So we're asking that the $9,700 be appropriated to use to cover the expenses from this year. Finance Director said that's what we have in the revenue budget, and then recommended that the revenue projection for activity is $6,000 for next year for fiscal year 2023. Any questions, any concerns?
No.
We do still have sports camps coming up this year. We just had Easter, so it's a good problem to have, and it's money that the revenue has been generated, it's just in a different account.
It's a legitimate request caused by a spike in inflation and
growing numbers.
As well as growing numbers.
Every kid that signs up is, if you think about it, $25 out of my pocket, but we have it in another pocket, so it's just how our budget works.
Appreciate it, Mr. Nally. Board?
I do have a question. I guess this is for either Ms. McBride or Mr. Rogers. So I get the 9,700 from fiscal year 2022, right? I recommended that you do that. All right, but you're saying fiscal year 23 increase the recreation activities revenue and expense budgets by 6,000. Well, we just recommended adopting a budget as prepared. So will this make it into that, or?
We can hold that one till after the budget's adopted.
Okay. What you really need right now is the $9,700.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Correct. And I'm hoping to give it back, it's just, you never know.
Yeah, so
what's
my
gonna be
understanding
happening.
is the athletes pay a fee, that money comes into you, but it goes back into the, say, the general fund, so you don't have access to it.
It comes into us.
You never see it.
I never
right?
see it.
And you've had more children
More
playing
participants,
sports,
yes.
right? So,
By a large percentage.
right.
So that's where the 9,700 comes from. He's over the revenue budget. by that much.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board appropriate $9,700 from fiscal year 2022 recreation activities revenue into the 2022 recreation budget.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So we will bring the additional request for 6,000 back at a later date? All right. Thank you, Mr. Nally. All right, next we have the county administrator's report. We have the emergency operations plan update 2022.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it is, we're updating our longstanding emergency operations plan. For the most part, we're updating the names and the phone numbers for different elements of the plan, and would ask the board to approve it. There's no other really significant changes to the plan.
Is there any questions, board?
I noticed one minor error. Amherst Fire Department has one brush truck, Manelson has two. They were just flip-flop.
Okay,
So, just not a big deal, but
we'll get that corrected.
unless you want to.
It's a living document. It changes as we go through the year.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions?
No, do you need a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion, yes, sir.
I'll move that the board direct staff to create a resolution to approve the emergency operations plan for Amherst County with the changes mentioned by Mr. Martin.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Wade. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. Popovich, County Attorney's report, do you have anything?
The only thing that I would want to bring to your attention is I was on a conference call last Friday with the outside counsel that has represented all of the localities within the Commonwealth with regards to opioid litigation. They are very positive and hopeful that monies from the Janssen and distributor settlement agreements will begin to flow end of May into June. They are currently in the process of testing out a software system that was developed to facilitate the transfer of funds. As a matter of fact, I agreed to be the guinea pig locality, not with Amherst, but with the city of Covington, to make sure that if there are any glitches, those can be remedied before all of the localities go ahead and go through the process. So that's being worked on, but the news is good that the money will at least hopefully start flowing sooner rather than later. And it should flow relatively quickly because for purposes of the distributor and Jason's settlements, their initial payments were already put into escrows. So they will it's available to be just shipped out now, following all the, check the boxes. So that's one good thing to look forward to, a little bit of additional revenue coming in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Popovich, appreciate that. All right, next we have liaison and committee reports. We have the school board. Ms. Tucker, do you have anything?
I know that the school board has been very, very busy, going through the process to select a new superintendent, working closely with the sheriff's departments on recent disturbances at the high school. They've pretty much got all they can say grace over right now, and Madam Chairwoman, we appreciate everything y'all are doing, so that's that.
All right, do you have anything about the Ag Committee?
On the Ag Committee, the 2 members of Nelson and 2 members of Amherst met last week. The scope of work that was done to see if the purchase of the land was feasible, there was a little circuitous approach to that, which I believe has now been remedied, and it appears that the land is suitable for the use that we have for it. So it will now be up to the Nelson County Board of Supervisors and the Amherst County Board of Supervisors to sit down together and decide if we want to go forward. I just remind everybody again that this does not commit Amherst nor Nelson to the actual debt for the structures or anything else, and that will become another entity. But this is just to decide, yes, that's the right place, and yes, we want to move forward in a joint venture.
All right, thank you, Ms. Tucker. The Emergency Services Council, Mr. Ayers?
Mr. Chairman, we had a meeting scheduled Wednesday of last week, and it got canceled due to numerous calls to a pretty large brush fire that had everyone tied up, so we've rescheduled that to the 27th.
All right. And Mr. Martin, you have anything?
So, as you just heard, the numbers of spring sports are up, and I think that's directly attributed to the quality programs run by our Parks and Rec staff and the many volunteers that dedicate their time to that. Unfortunately, the Parks and Rec Board did not meet last Monday due to the unfortunate passing of Ms. JoJo Alcock, a long-term member of the Parks and Recreation Board, and she will be surely missed by all.
Thank you, Mr. Martin, and I'd like to say God bless her family, and
absolutely
hope they can get through this. Time will make it better, but it's never easy. All right, Board, we'll go on to citizen comments. Anyone wishing to speak, address the Board, please come forward.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am?
I didn't quite catch as to why no discussion was on item C on number 6.
It's consent agenda.
It's consent agenda, yeah.
I just didn't catch exactly why I noticed there was nothing said about it.
Well, consent agenda items are, for the most part, things that are administrative. The board had previously decided to acquire a piece of property that had been offered to the county, and so the staff needs them to do an appropriation. So in order to spend money, the board has to give the staff the money to spend it. They've already told the staff to buy it, accept the offer, and so that was just an administrative act. There was really nothing left to discuss, since they had decided that they wanted to accept the offer anyway.
Okay, because it directly impacts most of us that were here speaking about the earlier stuff on Stumps Hill.
You're right.
Because it's at the bottom of Stumps Hill, which will be a part of this proposal, so.
It's a parcel that's adjacent to the park.
It's been talked about for years, using that as an extension.
Between Horsford Road and the park, and it allows Horsford Road then to connect to the park. That was the interest, and the party was not asking a lot for it.
It was just always my understanding through time and talk as I grew up, that they really didn't know who owned that after the lady who owned it died. So I was just wondering how it came up for sale. And nobody knew about it, and then
The owner approached us.
Okay. I'm not gonna say anything else on public until I talk to someone else, but I just felt like that directly impacts the proposed project on Slums Hill, so that again should have been put to public question as to do we want that money spent, purchased for that property to increase this park? Again, that is transparency. The decision was made without the public being aware of it.
The law requires the board to go to public hearing to dispose of any county property. But with regard to the purchase of property when it's offered, that doesn't require
So is the current
public
owner would
hearing.
be on record on a public access that we could see who actually owns it right now before
Oh,
it's
yes,
sold?
it's on the county GIS.
All right,
It
thank you.
hasn't transferred yet, so her name is there.
All right, thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll move on to our the citizen comment, and we'll move on to closed session. I make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711, subsection A3, for the purpose of discussion related to consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body, specifically related to the acquisition of properties located in District 1, 2, and District 5. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.